kind
So are
of,
quite in that context.
I kind of feel like the thing that we're really, what I think is interesting is it's like you're like you would want to see God, or that I would want to see God, and that you'd want to see what He sees. I kind of feel like divorcing it from the sensing aspect. We're talking about two types of intuition, NI and NE, and then
Right.
the physical component of it is the sensing. So SE is okay. Let's observe, and the NI is like, all right, I'm gonna find the bastard, and then NE is like, I have this concept of God as is all seeing, of having all these tiny bits of minutia, and the SI is like, all right, well, let's pin that shit. Let's find the minutia. But it's much more like, as far as the physical aspects go, SI is like, all right, let's pin it, and SE's like, all right, well, let's open up to it.
Right.
And I think probably I don't think this is recording. I'm not sure if it is, but I swear to God, this is the most concise of an explanation I've ever gotten out of any functional description of these fucking things. Um, I swear, like that's everything I need as far as breaking them down. It's like SI's like sensory pinning, SE's opening up to it. Uh, Perhaps you could say that NE is opening up to the abstract, or opening up to, potentially the divine or whatnot. Not exclusively, but as a component, as a more artistic component. Whereas NI is more of that pinning thing, but it's still interesting because it's like it's pinning, but in a different way. It's like the avoidance of pinning. It's like, if we don't try to pin, what will we see?
Right.
Which is
It's a very interesting, like, like, it's really interesting. This is to compare kind of the two.
yeah. And how and here's the thing that trips me up is we both exist.
Theoretically.
Right. So the let's if you want to phrase it another way.
Let's assume that we both exist. Okay.
Okay, so both of our perspectives are existent. At least via communication, we have perhaps maybe not established, but posited two ways of seeing things. And I would say that because both are spoken, neither one is entirely true.
But what truth are we? Because
Uh,
we're only talking about the truth within our own internal workings. We're not actually talking about what is the truth out there. We're just talking about
no, that's what I'm saying.
our.
That's like we both have this drive working in some ways in opposite directions, and yet both of our drives exist, theoretically. So there's something. I feel like there's something else, maybe
Hmm.
beyond that or whatever. That's like, how do I word this? It's like, I guess that's what I'm saying. Like right then, I had one of those little flashes I'm talking about. It's like, peeking behind the veil. It's like I just got the sense of I don't identify as a Christian anymore. I don't really particularly identify as religious. But even still, in that moment when we were talking about that, the NISC difference and NESI, when I realized that it's like, oh, these are two different ways of seeing things. Oh, there's multiple perspectives. Like, my brain immediately went to, well, what can that be synthesized into? Like, what does that mean beyond the two parts that we have here. And then I got a glimpse at the next level, or something like that. Like, I'm using level figuratively. It's not necessarily that it's another
Right.
level, but I just got the sense of like, I said in my head as if I were talking to God, "Oh, you clever bastard."
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like there's almost a difference in that you're looking at a more objective thing. Like, your method is almost more objective, while mine is more subjective or internally referenced. If that makes sense. Like, I think it's that SE versus SI kind of.
I
feel like
don't
that's
know
kind of
why
the
I
difference.
think this. I don't know why I think this, but immediately what came to mind is that the thought that mine could possibly get more derailed or get derailed more easily than yours. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense. Yours seems to be more of just a whole approach, a holistic kind of. It's a more. Mine works. Mine doesn't. Mine allows a lot for the I don't know. Maybe part of it is the understanding that there's understanding that I don't understand. That makes any sense. Like, it's like the things I don't understand are actually accounted for in the. You can see where they're missing a lot of times, even if you don't necessarily know what goes there. But you can accept so many possibilities of what might go there. Like, there's that any thing. It's like there's that. It's always. This is interesting. You can almost fill in pieces of the puzzle with the infinite possibility. And that makes perfect sense.
That reminded me of something. I was listening to a podcast with Neil deGrasse Tyson on it. It was a Joe Rogan podcast. He was talking about how there's different magnitudes of infinity. So there's even distinctions between different infinities. And I don't know if that ties in at all, but what you said reminded me of that.
I relate to that on a on a non-mathematical level. Internally, it's different measures of different like magnitudes of uncertainty or of unknownness.
Yeah.
But it's that containment thing. It's like it goes back to that instead of finding the core of the issue. Sometimes it just the pattern surrounds it, and it's into surround things kind of with the pattern, even if I don't necessarily know what goes within there, and yet it becomes functional and acceptable. It becomes a form of understanding of seeming understanding or effective understanding or something. I think.
So it's like we're both putting our feelers out to, our little antenna. We're both sticking those out to try to get a hold of this thing called existence. And as far as the sensing aspect goes, you're wanting to find those components, as you said, so you can see what God sees. You can have sort of within your domain all these different understandings or all these different experiences of sort of concreteness in a way. Whereas I kind of feel like the extroverted form is taking in everything so that you can forget about it. It's like the extroverted irrationalities are like providing backdrop. Sort of that shading I was talking about. It's like providing contrast. so that when the other irrationality, like let's say extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition, is trying to provide backdrops so that when you pin things, you can there's some sort of understanding or distinguishment that yes, this is a pin. I don't know if that relates entirely, but I kind of feel like that there's a contrast. It's like, yeah, I think I'll go with
Yeah,
backdrop for those two.
I don't know because that I feel like the NE for me is much more active than that concept seems to imply to me.
Right.
Because
And maybe it's
it
for
thinks
intuition.
I think of things in units of NE, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I did think about it just now. Um, it might be that I'm confusing things because I imagine at this point now, like at first I was doubting. I was like, am I really NISE? How do I know I'm not some fucking ISFJ motherfucker that's just been masquerading this whole time? But as I've been talking about it with you right now, I'm like, no, I think I'm preferring the SENI form of things, because I have heard it said that SI is like concrete impression. It's like the physical. I don't know. It's like so maybe then it's I don't know. See, now I'm trying to think about this now. It's like maybe sensing. Um, I don't know exactly what it would be. Um, okay, so maybe the thing that you're wanting to get within your domain and having all the little different pieces of, maybe the sort of forgetting or backdrop aspect is still just sensing for you, but it takes on a different form.
Yeah, I mean it's just containment. Like to me, SI in this context is very much storage, not shape.
Okay, so then the pinning thing, would you relate that more to NE?
See, I'm
Because
not pinning anything
okay,
except for maybe there's like when you're exploring an idea. Yeah, but see that the pinning is required in order to clarify an idea, but that's very much a process thing. But as far as like actual kind of conceptual, that what I'm talking about, it's a construct. It's one thing, and it's a pattern, and it's not made up of individual pieces. It's just this giant like spider webby thing. Is the way I
so
conceive of it.
I guess in a
And
way I'm
SI just kind of like stores it, but it's in units of NE. So and so like you were talking about that different magnitudes of infinity.
yeah,
NE is kind of like infinity. Is
okay.
the way that the units. If I had to like parse it into units that you could store, it's vectors of possibility, and so they are going to have different magnitudes and directions, and sometimes they might pare down to a single like statement or concept or whatever. Like that's theoretically possible, and that would resemble a pin, I suppose. And so those would be your strongest points of the pattern. But the pattern can be built of things of more uncertainty.
See, like I'm
And things
noticing now. I was gonna say I'm noticing now that it's like when I try to do what I'm doing of like pinning shit, I get more lost. Like I seem to lose what it is that I'm talking about. Whereas when I was talking in the more artsy fartsy, slightly abstract form, you're talking about like peeking behind the veil and shit like that, I kind of understood what I was talking about. And then I started trying to pin shit because I'm like, oh, well, now I want to know some of the more particulars, which perhaps could be TI in a way. Um, Eric calls it
Yeah.
relative certainty, which is trying to identify and make sure that things are in fact consistent. Um,
Right. Right.
And apparently that's a fucking dirty trap.